What's up? Welcome back to the Metalhead Car Show. If you follow this channel, you know we love cheap garbage, and today it is no exception. Today we look at 6 cars that were formerly very expensive and fast that have violently depreciated. All the cars are found on Auto Tempest, so all the cars are going to be priced in American, and since all the cars are in the same price bracket, I'm not looking at pricing, I'm not ranking them that way. I'm ranking them by what I'd buy the least to what I'd buy first. So enough dawdling, let's get right into it. Starting off with the Lotus Evora. Now when the Lotus Evora first came out in like 2009, its main competition was the Porsche Cayman. They both had 4 seats, they both were mid-engine, they both had V6s, they were both like roughly the same price. Now the Lotus's 6-cylinder came from the Toyota Camry, but unlike the Camry, it was up to about 270 horsepower. And for a car that is still small and light, that did more than enough to make you have fun with this car. Along with that, unlike its Exige and Esprit brethren, it actually had a bit of a softer suspension and 4 seats and a usable trunk, and you could actually go use this car. Some versions came with a supercharger and nearly 400 horsepower, but obviously that's not the car we're going to be looking at. We're looking at the base car that made about 280. And I think those really early cars have just aged so well. They looked great back in 2009, they look great now. Also, it's like 280 horsepower, it's a manual transmission, it doesn't weigh much, and it's a really good entry into mid-engine car ownership. Cool car. Next up is a car I've been kind of shocked to see just how bad the depreciation has been, and that is the BMW i8. Now the i8 came out in like 2016 as the super futuristic BMW of the new i series. And it was supposed to look like nothing else, and it had a drivetrain they've really never used on an 80 car before. It was a sports car that had a turbo 3-cylinder with a hybrid system that BMW claimed would do like 78 miles to the gallon, and that just never happened. But it did make like 365 horsepower. That made it not seem like much to really brag about, but also that came from a turbo 3-cylinder at its core. Now the styling of these cars was also pretty debated. Some people loved them, some people really didn't. People who loved them, like myself, thought they were just so ahead of its time and just so different from everything else. But also you had a lot of people who believed these things were truly overstyled and over the top, and it just didn't need anything it had. Now I believe those people are a bunch of wet blankets. This thing is super cool. It has gull-wing doors, you get a Cooper convertible, and there's just nothing like it. And you could go throw a car at me that makes similar horsepower or similar specs or this or that, but nothing looks this way, drives that way, and just kind of offers everything it does. Now I know why these things have depreciated. That battery is really expensive, it's gonna be gone on a lot of them, and that's why they're all like $37,000. But if you are willing to go change the battery in that car, you have a really cool car for still not that much money. Who knows? There's always the chance the i8 ends up being a very expensive car down the road. Next up is the Maserati GranTurismo. Now, it felt like we had the Maserati GranTurismo forever, and it started to show its age right at the end of its production run. But also, this thing looked stunning through its entire production run. I think this thing is just striking from every angle. Every angle is aggressive, and also, it sounds like this. And as we know, that sound comes from a 4.7 liter Ferrari drive V8, and it goes into a Maserati built exhaust. Say what you want about Maserati, they know what they're doing with exhaust systems. With that V8, these things made a bit over 400 horsepower. They were fairly quick cars, but they were more made for comfort. And with that, I'm pretty shocked that you can find one of these for under $20,000. Like, by far, it's the cheapest car on this list. And if you can get one with a manual transmission, beautiful, it'd be incredible. You just need to be brave enough to fix all the parts that will break on you and all the Ferrari built parts that are going to be wildly expensive. But if you're willing to do all that, this thing is super cool. Next up, the Aston Martin DB9. The Aston Martin DB9 came out around 2005 as the new GT car from Aston Martin. And Aston Martin went out of their way to make this one of the most beautiful cars ever built. The goal was to use a 3/4 angle on every single part of the car, and it worked. This thing is stunning. Mild aggression from the front and back, but it's stunning. And much like the Vanquish and the DB7, it still used that Ford-derived 5.9 liter V12, making about 460 horsepower now. In my mind, this is like $65,000 cars. In fact, you can find these for under 40 now is crazy to me. I think like this is the ultimate look rich, be broke car ever built. And knowing a lot of the parts on this car are just like Ford parts thrown in, like off-the-shelf Bosch parts, this thing could be more affordable to actually keep running if you're willing to do the research. Super cool car. In second place, in a car I did not actually expect to have on this list, but the C8 Corvette. Now, the C8 Corvette first came out in 2020. Chevy was saying that the MSRP on this car was going to be $59,000, and not a single person on the entire planet paid $59,000 for one of these cars. The C8 Corvette, along with many other sports cars, was so violently marked up that finding one for under $100K, at least in Canada, was almost impossible. I actually remember a dealership out in the Gatineau side in Quebec advertising one of these as the cheapest C8 Corvette in all of Canada at $128,000. That was in like 2022. Like total madness. But what'd you get for that money? You got nearly 500 horsepower. You got a car that do almost 200 miles an hour. You got a car that do 60 to under 4 seconds. It was a stunning Corvette. That engine would take whatever beating you'd want to throw at it. And it was the most worked out and stable Corvette ever made. I remember when these things first came out, that dude in blue actually got his hands on one, and he was saying that the Corvette he was driving also had a twin turbo kit on it, so it's making about 750, 760 horsepower, and it was just made for it. Launched from 4,000 RPM, no problem. It hooks up, it goes. As when the C7 ZR1 at the time was making the same power, and everyone said it was a handful to use when you're actually using it. But seeing this, dare I say it, supercar, now like under $50,000, like just under $50,000 is crazy to me. Arguably the best car on this list by far. But the one I would actually go buy first, the one that would probably kill me faster than everything else on this list, is the Dodge Viper. Now, with every single other car on this list, I have said like particular generations of what car you can actually get. But the Viper right now, you can get first gen, second gen, and third gen Dodge Vipers for under $50,000. Now, the first gen Dodge Viper, it came with a 8-liter V10 that's pulled out of a pickup truck that was increased to 400 horsepower with no driver aids whatsoever. Actually, along no driver aids, no side windows, no door locks, no door handles on the outside, no usable trunk, and if you want to throw anything else in there in the comments, go at it. But one of the legacies to the original Dodge Viper was 30% of them were crashed on the way home from the dealership. These things were a handful and they would try kill you any moment. Now, the really big increase was for the Gen 3 Dodge Viper. That was the 2003 Viper that had that glorious 8.3 liter V10. Now, that was making 500 horsepower and it would still try kill you the moment you tried going a little bit hairy with it. They were more refined, they were better built, they were still just as likely to kill you as the original cars were. And apparently it's an unpopular opinion to say that the Gen 3 Vipers look amazing. Why? They do. Gen 3 Viper, Gen 3, Gen 4 Vipers, best looking Viper ever. Fight me in the comments. But anyway, you can now go pick up those generations of Dodge Viper for under $50,000, under $40,000 in some cases. So that's 6 cars that were once really expensive or very fast that you can now go buy for under $50,000. But I want to know, what do you think? Of those 6 cars, which one would you buy first, and were there any on the list that surprised you just due to how cheap they've got? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, subscribe, join if you've seen. I tend to post a couple times a week, and I'll see you later.